Hello and welcome to another Best Junglers episode, this one fresh for patch 11.3, where we should have a decent amount of meta shifting changes, except for Udyr, as well as some other interesting changes that might shift the jungle meta in a different way depending on your MMR. For once, there's actually a little bit of a disparity between the ranks where some things just work very well and some just don't. We have seen the rise of Mundo jungle. Viego exists as a new champion in the landscape, and simultaneously exists as every other champion also. And we don't need much more of an introduction than that, but please do head to the gameplay channel and subscribe to that if you want regular gameplays, analysis of your favorite champions that goes out multiple times a week. And also please join me on Planet 9, the community there, as well as the coaching classes that are available. And now without further hesitation, let us begin. So it's the S tier page, and if you watch any pro leagues, if you paid attention to the thumbnail whatsoever, if you were playing the game at all, you know there's a wild Udyr running around. Depending on what skin he's actually using, you might get different comedy values out of having him on your team or against you. And if you happen to be a mobile champion main, I'm sure you are enjoying just being run down and obliterated. The fact that a champion that consists of about 5 pixels running in sandals using an item called Turbo Chem Tank is the one reaping all this destruction pretty much says everything you need to know about the state of the game. And yes, you'll say, well, didn't he just get nerfed in the most recent patch? He did. But when you remove all the other things that kept him somewhat in check or at least matched his power level, you know, stuff like Olaf with Gold Drinker, which is now, had his kneecaps shot off, most likely by a Shieldbow Graves. And when you add into the fact that Udyr actually is unkillable with this build, and the fact that he overkills you with his raw base damage. Yeah, it's great that they took a few base values off of the damage, except he was unkillable and already overkilling people anyway. So I mean, you remove the extra damage, but he still does enough to kill you while being unkillable himself, while farming the entire map, and taking all the objectives, and counter jungling your jungler to the point that he's down 4 levels. And not to be forgotten, we do have our magical unicorn pony Hecarim. You know, of all the old guard of dominant meta junglers over the past 12 months, he's really the only one that has now sustained that presence. Yes, he isn't as overpowered as he once was last year. Yes, he has been slightly nerfed, but he is far away from being sent out to pasture. Still rampages the whole map with his movement speed, still collectively destroys any squishy targets that don't have any escapability, and he really still is simply extremely strong. Nothing stopping him from carrying you to whatever elo you desire. The thing is, Kha'zix though, while still dominating solo queue and being the best AD assassin jungler in the game, his high elo presence has fallen off notably. There are just better junglers that have much better synergy with the meta in the higher tiers and in pro play. Being squishy, not being able to full clear and crab that often, way more coordination, you've got a lot of enchanters running around with cringe builds like Moonstaff. Seriously, when I'm playing support, I don't want a Moonstaff mage, just give me a good old ADC any day of the week. And Kha'zix thrives on the skirmish ability, the uncoordinated nature of solo queue. And basically for 99% of players, that's you. Therefore, an assassin that has damage representative of the repressed amount of feelings millennials have is most likely going to be pretty good in solo queue. And he is. Now you might think Kha'zix went away, which is what he wants you to think when you kill him as well. He doesn't. And he didn't. He simply was a bit weaker, but they rebuffed some of those AB items, giving back raw, reliable damage, which means every time you use Q, you get those stats. However, the Liandry's build is the way to go. A lot of mana for spamming, and a lot of burn damage to make it even worse to get hit by 1 Q. You add that up over time and the magic shred becomes, well, fatal. Now he is medium difficulty for most of his kit. He is very difficult in terms of maximizing that first clear so that you can get it done by like 305, 310 at the latest. Having that map awareness, use your ult properly, knowing how to path, camp a lane, and secure objectives. Because you are very squishy early on, and while you do have sustain in terms of Ravenous Hunter, other junglers that get ahead will simply kill you and then you won't do any damage with your ultimate. So good pathing and good jungle practices simply allow you to get huge leads that can never be matched. And yes, Nunu has been nerfed a little bit. Yes, tank mythics are currently horrific. And maybe I'm overselling this, but honestly, if you want to play tank in solo queue and you are in higher elo, Nunu is still the de facto choice. Nothing beats river stomping any lanes that don't pay attention to you. Nothing beats Q smiting every other jungler in the game. And if you watch my 2 tricks for every single jungler in the game video, you'll know that little trick about sustaining your passive in teamfights, which for lack of a better word is just disgusting, especially with multiple ADCs running around. Next up we have Echo, and I feel like he kinda goes under the radar at the moment from the jungle position. Yes, he is still a mid laner and he thrives best in that spot, but in the jungle he really can afford to clear fast. He has no cap on that W now. You can have strong and decent impact, your W stun is still unnatural, and once you start scaling, you've really, is there a better snowballing jungler besides maybe Rengar and Echo? You will absolutely annihilate any squishy targets. Oh, and by the way, you can also go things like Nash's Tooth if you enjoy split push ability and DPS. And while everyone likes to point out the safety of his ultimate, honestly, good Echoes are positioning well, flanking well, and using that ult a bit more aggressively anyway. And welcome back to Mr. Sticks. If you're looking to fiddle some LP from the current patches, he's still the way to go. Ulting over walls, clearing super fast, basically your more accessible Kha'zix. That absolutely dominating, game-changing mid to late game ultimate, and the fact of the matter is, even if you have to play passively, give up a few dragons, a herald, you're losing lanes, simply one good ultimate will get you shutdowns, pushes of mini waves in the other direction, now you have control over the next spawns, and you continually use those game-changing ultimates to deconstruct the atoms of the enemy. And finally, yes, Elise just was nerfed. Her early game values though didn't change as she levels them up, which means while the Q and the W will fall off as she maxes those, the early game power still exists, and her win rate did dip a little bit, but it's not stopping Elise from doing what she wants to do in the early game. It simply stifled that damage on the Q as she reaches max ranks, and then will stifle the DPS she gets from W in that mid game. This means the good Elises, the ones that really harness the early game, won't really notice that fall off too drastically if they are closing the game out in the proper way. Right, moving on to the A page, we have Ivern. There is no doubt he is still performing very well in solo queue, but the nerf to the shield on the E, the health growth, this does affect you when you spam an ability, and really that E feels like it's being perma-spammed. So those shields will add up over the course of skirmishes and fights. We talked about the Q nerfs that he had a while back. He only used that once really in a fight anyway, so once it was down, it was down. However, now you take 20 off a shield here, you take 20 off the next shield, and 20 off the next shield, and that will add up over the course of a fight for the amount of damage that the person you're shielding can absorb. Evelyn, on the other hand, is doing quite well. Win rate is still solid, itemization has a few choices. Yes, Lichbane Rush is considered the best go-to. You can choose Night Harvester for that teamfight ability, Protobelt for your gap closing and annihilation of single targets, and the surprise cheese factor always aids in your ability to climb because people just don't respect the map. So yeah, we have Skarner, and you might be questioning why is he so high? Well, as I just mentioned, they nerfed Ivern a little bit, and they also nerfed Olaf a lot more. His numbers, his Gore Drinker, his Iron Spike Whip, yeah, those things were the two best statistical counters to Skarner in the game on 11.2. Now it's 11.3, and they don't exist, so Skarner's enjoying running around a bit. Farm fast, crawl fast, stun hard, win hard. And yeah, it's tradition at this point, so Rammus is next. They nerfed him, I guess. In more serious elos, he doesn't really exist anyway, he will never be picked, he doesn't have that same success rate, so he really isn't here for your sort of diamond and plus, even in platinum, but for your gold and below, he still performs very well, he does what you need him to do. Are there some better choices? Yes, but he is also going to be getting that shiny new ultimate, so whatever limitations he has that restricts him to the lower end of the rank bracket might be nullified depending on that change, so keep an eye out for our favorite spinning ball of spikes. And while you might say, well, Rek'Sai is not a worse jungler than Rammus, I agree, Rek'Sai is a far better jungler than Rammus in every sense of the word. The thing is, this is the best junglers for every single rank. And if you're platinum and above, more diamond and above, but you can use her in platinum, you understand early game pressure, you understand pathing, counter jungling, and I hope you understand diving because that's what Rek'Sai wants to do. Yeah, the Sterix was nerfed, but Rek'Sai can always do your proudest crawl Edge of Night, and that's what was being built anyway, so make sure your pathing is good, you make the right early game decisions, we have a video all about that. So if you're executing on those principles, Rek'Sai is still absolutely beastly. And pretty, of course. Now I wanted to put Mundo here, so let's make this an honorary Mundo position as well, just because his tankiness is absolutely hilarious. The fact that he gets super low while clearing is a weakness that is exploited by good junglers. But as we saw in the gameplay channel, if you can navigate that well with good pathing, and you actually get a few kills, you're gonna run away with it and no one's going to be able to kill you. However, the overall win rate just isn't really up to par. The ban rate and the play rate are solid, it's just that it isn't as easy as people think to navigate him in the jungle, but if you can, he is very good. And on that note, as you would have seen, Shaco is actually in the spot because his win rate is good. Now I know the mains of this champion like to complain that he's useless and he cannot be played in high elo, but this is for everyone, not just high elo, that's its own section. And his win rate is still 51%, his play rate is over 4%, he is performing well. Just make sure the unique style means you get used to him, you get used to the play style, and you actually position properly because a bad Shaco is utterly useless. Next up we have Viego. I've already run a full gameplay for him on my other channel. His gameplay itself isn't exactly that difficult, medium difficulty I'd say. The fact that you are required to know almost every champion in the game, the skill cap is extremely high. You can become another champion, but if you don't know what they do, I don't want you reading the tooltips when you could be doing something crucial in a teamfight. And that's where it comes in big, because in teamfights, when you take multiple souls, you need to be able to seamlessly go from one champion to the other very quickly. And if you don't, you're losing advantages that the champion provides. When he's ahead as well, the damage is disgusting. He can 1v1 very well, skirmishing is good, clearing is very solid. Despite just being a recent release, win rate is very close to 50%. That's why he's here, and he doesn't really fall off from the gold, platinum, diamond in terms of win rate, which is a good sign. And finally, yes, I'm putting our favorite Rengar, simply because if you are good at the champion, there's nothing more oppressive than getting fed with smart pathing and clever ultimate usage. If your bush play is unmatched as well, then hey, hop around, make them dance. Those W changes really helped him a lot, changed the way we clear a little bit, but made it super easy to go for a full clear now. And what else can you say? He's a winner. That is a quick summary because we spent more time on the S and A tier pages considering the big shift in the meta. You'll see nothing has really changed drastically in terms of the champions that you see. Obviously, Udyr sits atop this list now because of his dominance over the whole game. Every other champion you see here, you've seen before, except with Mundo, I'm slapping him in here while his win rate is a bit dicey the higher up you go because people don't execute properly. In low elo, you are simply not going to get punished, which means you have freedom to scale, become unkillable, and chase everyone down in the game. Warwick here, it's tragic, just isn't really great at the moment at all, and is basically just an exclusive low elo champion. Echo obviously is good everywhere. And in high elo, we have a few shifts. Obviously, there are many other champions that work here. Things like Rengar and Kindred always come to mind. But those are more specific use cases. If you watch my challenger video on what junglers are actually using a few weeks ago, you will note that there's a very clear trend of Nidalee still being absolutely dominant in this tier. More so on Korea and EU West, but it is being used basically everywhere. And yes, the simple fix that got Taliyah back in the meta was making that follow-up damage on her Q 50 to 100. They've now reduced that back down to 80, which will punish average players and more unskilled players, but in high elo they will be able to navigate it. There's a certain degree of safety in the way that they play, and because they buffed that movement speed, she's still gonna get around the map faster than everyone else, and yes, throw another rock. I want to grumble something about Graves, but all I'm gonna say is shield, bow, shield. Very unbalanced. And finally, for all you pro play enthusiasts, yes, Lilia, great in high elo, great for your flex in your clash. Turbo scaling, lots of build options, not really conducive to low elo solo queue, but for high elo, extremely strong because of her clear speed and scaling and the fact that you can rinse it, and then that damage and the E-balls you throw around the map, and the Q flashes on your R's that, tilt everyone into oblivion, makes her really, really strong in this elo. So there you have it, a good collection of the meta shift. Hopefully this develops over the next few weeks. I will update this video as I always do when that happens. Keep an eye out for other changes coming up in the next patch. Always keep an eye on the stat sites to see if anything changes. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Please do like, share, and comment if you did. Trim those split ends on the beards, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.